There are absolutely no excuses for Syracuse basketball's performance. None. They didn't have Donnie Freeman. That's cool. I understand that. On the surface, you would think that's an excuse. You didn't have Donnie Freeman. Leading scorer, best player in the team. I understand that. Iowa State was also missing their best player. Tamin Lipsey. Ever heard of him? He's pretty good. As I said, he's Iowa State's best player. In fact, that is now back-to-back games in which Syracuse's opponent was missing their best player. Against Kansas, it was Darren Peterson, who is better than anyone else who played in the game yesterday against Kansas. And Tamin Lipsey, who's better than anyone that played in the game today against Iowa State. And so while Syracuse is shorthanded, they don't have Donnie Freeman, the opponents that Syracuse is going up against also did not have their best player, the exception being Houston, which now, by the way, seems like an outlier. It does. And if you recall that game, as competitive and as tough as Syracuse was, remember that Syracuse needed a miracle to force overtime. They went on an 11-0 run in a couple of minutes. They got hot. Houston made some bonehead plays, and Syracuse nearly took advantage of that. And it would have been a terrific win. But it's an outlier. This era is going to come to an end soon. How did we get here? How did we get here? Well, it did not start out that way. I guess that's what's sad about this game is it didn't start out as a blowout. Syracuse basketball came out. They were kind of trading buckets back and forth with Iowa State. They were turning the ball over a ton. More on that in a moment. But Iowa State, they threw the first punch. They go on a 12-0 run. They lead 28-18 in the first half. But as we have seen from Syracuse in the past couple of games, they're able to respond. They're able to fight back. They're able to play great defense. They started hitting some outside shots. Kyan Anthony got involved. Tyler Betsy was hitting shots. Holy smokes, Nate Kings finally hit a 3 in the first half. And so they responded after being down 10 to tying the game. They went on a 10-0 run. And at one point in the first half, after being down 10 points, they briefly took the lead. And so at the break, Syracuse basketball, believe it or not, was right there with Iowa State. Right there. Again, one of the best teams in the country. They were right there. They're only down 1. They're shooting the ball well from deep. It's finally going in. What were we talking about yesterday in the postgame show? This team can't shoot. Well, in the first half, they shot 8 of 19 from three-point line. That is 42%. Now, they committed 9 turnovers. That's bad, obviously. But you figured if they can keep up the hot shooting, take care of the ball a little bit more, they can stay in this game with Iowa State, and maybe, just maybe, they can get themselves a big victory. A victory that would have been quad 1. It would have been a resume booster. And we'd all be feeling pretty good about Syracuse despite being 1-2 in Vegas. But they're going up against 3 top teams in the nation. So you know what? Being 1-2, getting a win against Iowa State, and you go home and you feel confident. You're going up against Tennessee, but you feel like you can beat Tennessee because you were right there with Iowa State, and maybe you just beat Iowa State. But that's obviously not what happened. Because in the second half, Syracuse basketball got outscored 60-30. They lost a half of basketball by 30 points. They gave up 60. For a defense through the majority of the season so far has been terrific. They completely melted down in the second half. The whole team melted down. Nobody played well. There's not one player that you can really look at and say, he played a good game in the second half. Naithan George, Syracuse's new starting point guard this year, He was out there just doing his best Ricky Collins impression with all the turnovers. Nate Kings, yeah, I'm still picking on Nate Kings. Can you catch a dribble handoff? Is that too much to ask for? Can you catch a dribble handoff? Because he drops a dribble handoff early in the second half with Syracuse already down 7 points. And what does it lead to? A dunk on the other end for Iowa State. And from then on, it was just an avalanche. It was a non-competitive half. And I was hoping, and it was false hope it turned out to be, that, okay, well, maybe they're down 10 or they're down 12, they're down 13, they're down 14. Okay, but we have seen Syracuse fight back in these games, scratch and claw, being able to keep within striking distance, get on that 6-8-0 run. It doesn't have to be a 15-0 run. You don't need it all back in a couple of minutes. You just need to stay in the game. But instead, Syracuse decided, we're gonna keep giving the ball to Iowa State. How many turnovers did Syracuse have in this game? Let me pull it up right now. 19. 19. How did they shoot from deep after a really good first half? Well, they ended up shooting 8 of 28 from the three-point line, 29%. Free throw shooting for Syracuse basketball, 12 of 19, 63%. Field goals as a team, 39%. And they weren't getting stops. And so as a result, they got blown out.